moving on, I would like to talk a bit about regulations again because we've been talking about that for a bit. So in Australia, in 2022, there was a revision of the Privacy Legislation Amendment Bill. It revised the bill that was previously saying $2.2 million for serious or repeated breaches as fines pre 2022. That was increased to greater than $50 million, or three times the benefit that was obtained by stolen data post 22. Or worst case scenario, if they can't find any cost or they can't calculate any cost, it is 30% of your turnover for a period of 12 months, which was pretty substantial. So that was the cost of breach that the legislation amendment bill passed. So as you can see, the slides from here, the few slides I've already mentioned, it's quite a few numbers. The main reason why we put this is to highlight the importance of cost and compliance and how important it is. So please bear with me in this. As I said, this report is from the IBM breach report. A lot of the data from there, but I've also correlated that with the OAIC and the ACNC links as well. The actual cost of compliance. As you can see here, the average cost of data breach in 2023 reached an all-time high of 6.70 million. Just to give you an insight, it increased 15.3% since 2020. Worst case scenario, only 1/3 of the companies discover the data breach through their own security firms, which means 67% of the breaches were reported by a benign third party or unfortunately by the attackers themselves. Most affected data breach industries. As you see here, unfortunately, healthcare industry comes as the winner in an unfortunate way for 13 years in a row. So as you can see here, since 2020, healthcare data breach costs have increased 53.3%. This highly regulated industry has seen a considerable rise in data breach, like how you will see in few of the other slides later. These breaches roughly cost the healthcare. An average breach was roughly reported to be at Australian dollars $16.45 million. Another not so surprising percentage is the number of breaches that involve data in the cloud. With the trend of people adopting cloud mainly since 2020, this is not surprising. So in 2023, you can see 82% of breaches were related to data stored in the cloud. This includes public, private, and even multiple environments. 39% of breaches actually were spanning multiple cloud environments by a single client, showing the importance of having security and compliance within your firm on top of those provided by the cloud providers itself. The global cost of data breach. As you can see here, these are two figures where I have mentioned. In 2023, sorry, in figure 1, I'm talking about in 2023, the average cost of a data breach rose to AUD 4.40 or USD 4.45 million. This was actually a 2.3% increase from 2022. As you can see here, since 2020 to 2023, there was a 15.3% increase in cost for each data breach, which was highlighted in a few previous slides as well. Again, as you can see, this is per record of breach data. It's again reached a new high in 2023. So in 2023, each record costed roughly about $165. And this, although between 2022 and 2023, it's only a $1 difference, you can see the biggest difference noted is between 2020 and 2021, which was roughly a 10.3% increase, where each record costed, or each breached record costed $161 in 2021 from $146, which is a 10.3% increase. However, the fact to know here is it's never reduced. The breaches, as much as becoming complicated and sophisticated, it becomes more and more expensive as well. Cost of data breach, this is, we have already explained this, healthcare for 13 years in a row. Healthcare, unfortunately, as you can see, the interest in getting healthcare data by adversaries is a lot more, because an average breach for healthcare was roughly about 10.93 million, as opposed to just 5.90 million in financial, if you breach a financial record. Talking about attack vectors, these are um, attack vectors involved, or the initial attack vectors involved when you have a data breach. As we all know, and as you can keep seeing pretty much in our environments, the phishing and stolen or compromised passwords where about 16% of all the breaches were related to phishing, and about 15% was related to stolen or compromised credentials. So costing the phishing, for example, cost about 4.76 million per breach, and the stolen or compromised cost about 4.62%. Although malicious insider is not very common, unfortunately, it's the most expensive. So you see here an average of USD 4.90 million when data involved includes an initial attack vector of a malicious insider, which is 9.6% higher than a global average cost of 4.45 million per data breach. So mainly, basically ensuring that you need to have policies and procedures in place to check and make sure you have all these covered. Uh, what's next? Yep. So next is the mean time to identify and mean time to contain. So as you can see here, in 2023, it took roughly about 9 to 10 months on an average for a breach to be identified and recovered in total. So it took 204 days to identify a breach and 73 days to resolve the breach. If you look to the other side, it basically talks about, sorry, if you look to the other side, it basically talks about the initial attack vectors. As you can see, breaches that were initiated with stolen or compromised credentials and malicious insiders took the longest to solve, roughly about 11 and 10 months respectively. Business partner, supply chain compromise, or supply chain compromise. So what is a business partner supply chain compromise? A business partner supply chain compromise is a data breach that originates with an attack on a business partner. 15% of the organizations actually identified a supply chain compromise as the source of a data breach. As you can see here in figure 1, a, a breach that involved the business partner supply chain compromise took 233 days to identify and 74 days to rectify. This was 11% increase over breaches that didn't involve a business partner supply chain compromise. With more days of compromise, of course, relates to more days or more money, which means roughly about 4.76 million per data breach, which involves business partner supply chain compromise, as to 4.23 if it's not a business partner, which is roughly about 12.8% increase involving the business partner compromise. Cool. We also, something which I also remember to talk to is about using threat intelligence investments. So companies that use XDRs or WAFs or things like that to protect their environment, who have invested in technologies to protect their environment, they are 13.9% less prone to attacks than companies who don't have those security investments. So that's a really return on investment of roughly about $2 million return on investment. So it's a really good thing to have, or to start thinking about investing in automated technologies. Organizations with more proactive and risk-based vulnerability management, such as vulnerability testing, penetration testing, red teaming, etc., they experience lower than average data breach cost compared to organizations that relied solely on the CVEs and the CVSs that get advertised. So talking about cost savings per breach on the slide, we know here that cost savings for companies that adopt a DevSecOps framework in mind, which means security first, while even before thinking about development, they basically save 2.53 million Australian dollars should there be a breach involved in their environment. That itself is a sizable return on investment in that following year. Cost savings achieved by organizations with high level of incident response planning and testing, as opposed to companies that don't have it, they save 2.24 million. I can give you a couple of examples here as well. Um, Threat intelligence being very heavily involved with incident response. We have had actually two incidents I can give you in my mind is when we have companies that don't have a proper incident response, should data breaches ever occur, they start to figure it out, they hope that it goes away, then they say they don't have enough capacity to understand things, they let things slip, and when it becomes much bigger than what they can handle, they invoke incident responders such as us. When we come in, it might often be a bit too late because OAIC here recommends us or suggests us to report any PII data loss within the first 30 days. So they have already crossed that, which means they're already subjected to fines plus that additional pressure that they have. In straight contradicting that, we have companies that have got proper IR planning, but they have not tested it. So for those kind of companies as well, being very proactive, should there be a breach, they go to OAIC in less than 2 days. They're only supposed to go in 30 days, like how I mentioned before. They go in 1 or 2 days. OAIC first says, have you told your customers? They said no. They go and tell all their customers saying that the data could be possibly breached. They then involve us there. We come and find out that it's only certain anonymous data affecting 1 or 2% of the company, which theoretically means they didn't have to put out there that um, that the entire fleet or all the users and their clients have been breached. It's a brand damage as well. So they acted way too soon than what was necessary. So we have got both sides of the coin there. So that's why we stress the importance of IR planning, testing, tabletop exercises. If you need more information and more examples or want to understand more about this, feel free to please talk to us. So moving on again, increase in data breaches for companies that have got very complex security systems, as opposed to companies that don't have got a simplified security system. So what I mean is, we have got, I'll give an example again. We have got companies that were involved in breaches where they had a password management system for their application team. They've got a password management system for the infrastructure team. They've got a password management system for the SecOps team. And then they have got a password management system for the executive team. They tried to make it overly complex. So when there was a breach within one of the passwords, they had to then spread their technology or their experts into 4 different areas and try to check each and every password manager and things like that to find out which one has been hacked and what passwords has been hacked. So unnecessarily, as you know, takes more time because your expertise is spread across the board. Hence, complex things will take more time, hence more cost. That is what it's talking about here, where it says 2.17 million dollars, where was the data breach cost for organizations that had high level of security complexity, as opposed to some things that are simple and effective. Moving on, companies that have got breaches that took more than 200 days to find and detect, which is the slide that I showed 2 slides before. Those kind of companies, of course, their money is the cost is even more. So they spent $1.54 million more than companies that had took less than 200 days to identify and contain the breach.